I'd like to keep this informal as we can. I would like to keep this as informal as possible. Don't want to use a time or anything. I ask that the council members are here. Keep your questions, to the point. Let's not get in the weeds. Be respectful of everyone. I'm not going to run this like a normal council meeting or anything. I just want us to have, open dialogue with the directors who are here. And I want to thank Chief Culberson and Patrick. They're here now. I guess Terry will join us later. Thank you for taking time out of your days and putting this together. I've been on now, this is my third year on the council, and several of us have always talked we should probably have budget hearings because we don't understand the whole budget, and there's a lot of questions. We all make assumptions, and sometimes our assumptions are incorrect. So we thought this would be a good time for each of the departments to show us how they get there, what they need, what they don't need, so we just have an overall better understanding of the budget before we sit down with the finance department and the mayor and come to some decisions. So are there any comments from the council up here before we start? Chief, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Council. I promise I'll only take the full 44 minutes and 59 seconds for my presentation, but with that being said, I'd like to give a quick presentation on how we get to where we are and why our budget is what it is. So I'll go ahead and start. So a little bit about us. Our mission statement's prepare, prevent, protect. It says so much about our department and what we do. We are way more than fire suppression. So we focus all of our efforts on public education, fire prevention initiatives, preparedness, and overall community risk reduction. Should these efforts fail, we are ready, prepared, and trained to respond to a wide variety of calls of service. And it's way more than fire suppression. We do way more than kicking down doors and spraying water on fire. So we have the ALS transport service for Pennington County, Meade County, portions of Meade County, southern or eastern Custer County, and just a small bit of Lawrence County. So our ambulance service covers 3,200 square miles of this area out here, West River. We also have a technical rescue teams. Those are all the rescues. So we split them between heavy and light rescue. So heavy rescue is all the things that fall down and will trap people. So building collapse, subsurface areas, trench, that type of thing. Big equipment that needs big rams to be able to hold things back. Within that, we also have a canine unit in there. Drogon is a certified live search dog. He's detailed to South Dakota Task Force 1, so he's also a state asset, but we keep him here. He goes to work every day with Jeremy, his handler, and goes to work. The light rescue, that's mostly your diving, your swift water, high and low angle rescue. Both of those rescues also do vehicle extrication. We do hazardous materials. All of those specialties right there are part of South Dakota Task Force 1. If you look at the state of South Dakota, there's 4 departments that are assigned to that. That's Sioux Falls, Aberdeen, Watertown, and us. So you can kind of get an idea we're it on this side of the state. So pretty much from Mitchell this way, we're responding to help out in any type of major emergency throughout the state of South Dakota. That's coordinated through the state of South Dakota and their duty officer. We also provide ARF services. We have a really robust wildland response, so we send folks out every summer, go to do wildland response out throughout the state, mutual aid, so those folks hopefully will come back here. We have quite a name for ourselves in the wildland arena. We often get name requested throughout the country. We have a crew that's been in California since June. Yeah, early June. So we'll keep moving. Mobile integrated healthcare. So our community healthcare workers who are doing some fantastic work. They're not part of our normal response for the city of Rapid City or for an ambulance service or a fire department, but they help with decreasing our 911 call volume. They coincide with our mobile medics. That's a whole key part of our mobile integrated healthcare program. Not to even mention all of our prevention programs and the things that our fire and life safety division do. They are reviewing all the plans throughout the city when they come to fire sprinklers, which are protecting this building. Public education, we have Bailey who's handling all of that for us, and she's doing a fantastic job helping and teaching this community how to be safer. And then finally, our wildland mitigation crew. They've turned into a pretty integral part of our department. They go out and thin the forest throughout the western half of the state, mostly within the confines of Rapid City and those areas that touch around. That's completely grant funded, which we'll get into a little bit here shortly. So again, as I kind of show, we're way more than fire, but I think we meet our vision statement very well, ever diligent in the delivery of public safety to our community. We are constantly working to try to improve that for this community and looking for ways to be better and more efficient. So who are we? So the Rapid City Fire Department's 180 employees that are authorized through the city. We operate, and those 180 employees are some of the most dedicated, excellent employees that you could possibly, and this city needs to be proud of them. We have folks that speak nationally. They are requested to go and teach leadership courses. Brian's an instructor for some of the Swiftwater that has to teach nationally. So we have folks that are well-known and well-recognized experts within their field. We have all of the specialty stations out here, all the specialties as I went through all of those. We do all of that out of 8 total stations. Now, 7 of them are the response 24/7, 365. The one station's our training station. That's station 2. I totally almost lost that. But station 2 up on Anamosa and Maple. I would love to make that a primary response station at some point, but that'll be a talk for a later date. It's definitely not in this budget today. Out of those 7 stations, we do 22,119 calls for service, with 31,665 units dispatched, with 19,348 hours spent on those calls. So the vast majority of that, or about 72.5% of that, will be EMS calls for service. So just anything and everything to do with medical will be taken out of that. What I want to talk about real quick about our call volume as you look at that number, that does not include anything that we do outside of response. So this is anything we do out of response, and it doesn't matter how many units go on that call. It's one call for service, whether there's 1 unit that goes or 12. So that's 1 call for service. We don't count in this number any of our PR and marketing events. We don't do our interactions. None of that. These are purely calls for service. So, and I'll get into a little bit more here in a little bit about our call volume. So, unfortunately, this year, 2025 is trending at an 8% increase in call volume. So we're projected to go up to 23,882 calls for service this year. So, want to give you just some fun pictures. This represents the calls for service. As the dots get larger, means more calls for service. It's hard, I know, probably, I don't know how your guys' screen looks, but I can sure show this to you at a later time. Each one of those colors represents a station or response district. So right in the center where it's the orange-yellow color, that's Station 1's district. That is our busiest district. These are all in-city calls for service. So you can see how that is split out. So most of that, Station 1 sits about right in that area. Station 3 would be right over in the middle of it. 5's right down in here. 6 is down below here in this yellow. 4 and 7 up here in the pink. We have a few holes. Whoops, sorry about that. The one big hole we're going to have that hopefully will get filled next year with construction starting will be Station 9, which will be put right out. I'm trying to see. It's hard for me to see from way out there. Right about there. So It'll cover up quite a bit. When we look at response times, one of the things you look at, obviously, is call volume and then response time to get to that call. We have a big hole out there where it's taking us too long to get to. That is the same as we have an issue right up here on the north side, and we do have a piece of property up there on Catherine Avenue. So just this in numbers, Station 1 obviously is the busiest with 8,000 calls for service throughout just in that district. Doesn't mean all those units, but those units went to at least that many calls. So second busiest was Station 4 at 3,979. So Station 4 covers the south portion of town, which includes the hospital. So you get a lot of transfers out of the hospital going to different locations. So one thing I want to note about Station 5 and Station 6, those two are what we call cross-staff stations. So those stations are a lower volume station, and we do, so there's 4 people that are assigned to that station. So all 4 of them ride on the fire apparatus. If an ambulance call comes out, 2 of those come off of the fire truck and go on the ambulance, and then we'll go on that call. If both the fire truck and an ambulance need to go, they'll split and they'll both go to that call, depending on the call type. Motor vehicle accidents will be a little bit different. It's worked pretty well. It's still working good at Station 6, but Station 5 starting to struggle. That number starting to get up there quite a bit. So, also as a note, Station 1, Medic 1 is consistently over the last 10 or 15 years has been in the top 50 fire-based ambulances as far as call volume in the country. So, and it continues to be so. We've done some things over time to try to slow that down, but it is continued to stay there because the call volume's there, even though we have peak load trucks, 2 of them that alternate in there also. So here's our county response. Yep, like I said, we cover 3,200 square miles. So it takes out all that call volume out of the city, and this is purely just the county, and you can see how far we travel. I ended up having to cut this down just a little bit, otherwise it would have been really hard to read. Because there's a few calls here and there just on the outside edges of that. So 2,766 calls for service outside of Rapid City, with Box Elder being the largest number, 838. So, and Rapid Valley unincorporated, soon Blackhawk, I understand, will be incorporated. They do 365. This is not ambulance only. Our fire apparatus go out there also. We provide mutual aid between each other. So just like on this last weekend, at one point we were down to 1 medic unit on Sunday. That's all we had left in the city available. The rest of them were dedicated on calls for service. So those, we have a great relationship with the 9 volunteer fire departments that ring us. They will start responding in if we need them to. We were able to weather that. We hired some folks back really quick, and we were able to staff some units, and then those units cleared. It's getting to be more and more. This year during the rally, we've had it happen twice, which is not normal for us. And so it's getting busier, and we know it. So one thing I want to do is how do we compare against everybody else? I've got others if you want to see some of these departments, but you can see on the left-hand side, this is Rapid City, about 82,000 people. We're doing about 0.27 calls per person, 127 calls per firefighter, and 3,160 calls per station. Pretty much everybody we do and we're able to get data from, we're doing more. Sioux Falls is doing 0.075 calls per citizen, 67 calls per firefighter, and almost 1,300 calls per station. The 2 with the asterisk, they do have an ambulance, they do transport, they provide ALS transport and into their local areas. So that Lawrence Douglas County, which is a fairly large department down there, they're doing 0.15 calls per citizen, 104 calls per firefighter, and 2,510 calls per station. The one, Billings has come close. St. Paul's the only other department, and we don't have them up here, that actually rivals us in calls per station. But they are starting to move towards adding stations and firefighters this year. So just wanted, like I said, I wanted to get through a real quick synopsis of who we are, what we do, how we do it, how busy we are. And this is how we get to a 21.3 $29 million budget between all of those major pieces. So the fire has its own budget, ambulance has got its own budget, and then hazard mitigation, which is the wildland hazard mitigation piece. I separated that out this year, so it's very clear what's going into that. So it's a total of $29,180,069. That kind of changes a little bit as interdepartmental, some things have changed and as you guys go through. So what I'll do is kind of roll through these as a high level, and then we can dive into it if you have questions. So the fire budget, which is the 202, it's $21,295,000. Admin is the largest piece of that, and each one of the stations is then broken out and has their own budget. They're much smaller. Admin's the big bulk of that, so the stations are broken down into things that they can do locally within their station. So all the employee costs, all the large major expenditure costs are all in the admin side of it. But at each station, they break a door, or if they need to purchase new chairs, that comes out of their budget. So they have items in there, money in there for each one of them to spend. There's a captain at each station that directs that budget. And overall, Chief Pavandra administers the fire budget. Obviously I do, but he gets to watch it a heck of a lot closer than I do for me. So really the big thing about our fire budget is it's been flat, other than wages and benefits. So over the course of the last 2 years, our operational budget has decreased 4%. So wages and benefits have been the big driving force behind the increases, but it's no surprise. Our business is about our people. It's our most important asset and our most expensive. Without them, we wouldn't be able to respond. So if you look at the operational budget this year is a 1% decrease, if no increase in the interdepartmental charges. And Daniel has talked to you about some of that already. That was changed a big piece. If you look at the mayor's budget in there, it says professional services. The cost increased there. Most of that was interdepartmental charges was put into there. We do have some increase in our professional services, but we're seen increases in all across the board in all of our software. These are outside of IT. These are our very fire-specific softwares that we pay for that deal with our scheduling, our PCR management, our records management, our training, all of those pieces under one, a couple big ones, plus CAD, and I could go on and on. We're seeing some increases in repair costs, as we always will. Repairing's getting more expensive. Our vehicles, some of them are getting older, but we have a really good fleet. Fuel always goes up. That coincides with our call volume. We're projecting a call volume increase since we're already up 8% this year. So we're projecting a fuel increase, and you've seen that in our budget. One thing I do want to note is we had a bunch of money in Station 2, but the staff that's there right now is our training staff. That's the training station. They will be moving into Station 1 shortly. So all of that cost is going to shift to training. We're able to get a new GL code that is specific to training. So that will help fund all the things that go on out at the training site, some of the training pieces that we do and purchase to help train our firefighters and our EMS providers. Otherwise, there's really minimal changes from last year's budget to this year, like I said, other than wages and benefits. So ambulance, the 890 fund, again, just like the other one, admin contains all the employee costs outside of the community healthcare workers, where they are a totally separate line item or budget. So admin contains all the vehicle costs, and each station has their own budget, just like the fire side. Chief Long runs the ambulance enterprise fund at this point. And to note, what's interesting about the 890 enterprise fund is it pays for 33% of everything that goes on in each station. So each station, their utilities and their repairs that happen, so they break a garage door, that 33% of that cost is borne by the enterprise fund. So there is some tie-in there with what they are doing in that enterprise fund. So for them, obviously, just like the fire side, wages and benefits increased. Another big one that's going to go up is our disposable and medical supplies. They're going to increase due to our call volume. As call volume goes up, we use more disposable supplies. The interdepartmental charges changed a little bit this year, but as note, which is really good, we don't have an ambulance loan payment this year. The ambulance services in the state of South Dakota and actually nationwide are struggling. It's a very difficult business to be in. There are very few private services that are getting into the 911 system much anymore. Most of them are handing them over to fire departments or local other governmental entities to do it. As you have all seen me have to stand here and do the write-offs, that's what we're talking about. We do 22,119 calls. 11,000 of those, 11,700 were transports. Of that, we probably get 40% reimbursement rate if we're lucky, 40 to 50%. And that's not even to start talk about, which I'm getting ahead of myself because that's some of our challenges, but, and I'll get to that. So let's talk about the hazard mitigation. It's about $800,000. Hazard mitigations are Wildland, or BLM, Bureau of Land Management. We have a grant with them. It's about $300,000 a year, give or take. They're all, the employees that are in there are 100% grant funded. We added one this year, a full-time employee, already improved earlier this year through that grant. Purely grant funded, and that's the way they'll stay. So the $200,000 in there, that's city matching funds. That's so if we provide some mitigation to a homeowner's, there's a part of this, there's a program where a homeowner can do some mitigation. A contractor comes in to do that mitigation. They have to pay 75%. The grant pays, I totally lost my mind, 50%. We pay a quarter, and then the homeowner pays a quarter. Thank you, Chip. So it's a great program. That's the $200,000 in matching fund. I think it's money well spent. Truly have seen some improvement. You just have to look at our most recent wildland fires that went right on the outside edge of our great city, and most of those properties where it first started were mitigated by our crews or a contractor. And those fires moved through their properties and didn't sit and then burn that property down. So tremendous savings and tremendous work. So one of the questions is what grants are we applying for? The really only federal grant we have today is the BLM or the Western States grants, and that's through the hazard mitigation. The fire side doesn't have much, if any, no staffing, no anything like that from the federal grant side as of today. We've applied for an AFG grant last year, or this year we were denied, but I'm sure next year we will attempt an AFG grant. So Assistance to Firefighter Grant, that's funding for equipment for fire and EMS. We will attempt to do some replacement of some of our aging equipment, especially our Lucas device, our power load cots, and things of that similar. Depends on where we're at that point. We're trying to work through some grants to get some new Lucases. We're trying to fit it into our operational budget now. So. And then we'll also go after some other fire equipment that's difficult to get or purchase through the normal budgeting process. So the one grant, so basically the fire service has two grants that they can go after. AFG, Assistance for Firefighter Grants, or the SAFER grant. One's for equipment, SAFER grants for people. We didn't apply for one this year, but we're looking at potentially applying next year. Had this conversation with the mayor just today. But it wouldn't start for 27. So this isn't going to affect the 26 budget, just more or less telling you about that. We'll have Station 9 that should be completed in the early parts of 27, and we'll need to staff that. So if we can find a way to be able to get a grant to be able to ease that expenditure in, I think it'd be a good opportunity. So you might hear that next year. I just wanted to make sure you knew that before I come to you next year potentially to to apply for that grant. But it does not affect the 2026 budget discussion. So challenges. Challenges for public safety are abundant. I think Chief Hedrick, who's sitting back here, can attest to this. We're all dealing with all together. This area is extremely busy. Our police department's busy and the fire department's busy. There's things that are just different on the West River. Much less that we're the only department, full-time, paid here department. Closest one is about 200 miles away. So if something extremely bad happens out here, no matter where in West River, they're gonna call us. We're everybody's contingency plan, unfortunately, and we find that out sometimes after the fact. But we're here, we're ready, willing, and ready to respond. So much less going into the 890 in the ambulance. If you can look there, that's the Medicare base rates for BLS base rate. In 2018, it was $337.60. 2025, it's $441.63. So it's gone up very minimally, and we have to operate off of that kind of reimbursement. I will take a jab a little bit at South Dakota Medicaid. They were excited that they gave us a 2.5% increase, but 2.5% off of $100 does not really cover much extra for our costs for the ambulance service. So cost is going up and reimbursement's not staying up at the same pace. So there's a whole EMS study going on this with the legislature this summer. There's going to be more to come, looking for different funding sources. All in all, I could spend a whole day just talking about the challenges that EMS has in the country, much less South Dakota. So one of the other questions is if we had more. I'm hoping I'm going to catch some of your guys' questions. That's why I'm going to keep on going. But if we had more, let's face it, our budget's good. We're good with what our budget is today. We have what we need. We've put in what we wanted, and we're moving forward. We're about as thin as we can be, though. So, but if we had more, I would suggest we invest in more prevention. And when I say prevention, that's across the board. But more importantly is mobile integrated health, mobile medics, community health care workers. We have seen great success with that, with the programs that we've had with Journey On. In 2020, you can see here, in 2021 to 2023, we saw a 0.43% reduction in call volume. We haven't had that since we started ambulance service, not for a 3-year period for sure. The 3 years prior to that, so leading up to and including 2020, we went up 33%. So without those programs, I think we would have stayed on that same trajectory as we were before. As we now evidence, now we've got an 8% increase now. We would be doing over 30,000 calls a year if that would have stayed on the same pace. And that's, so prevention, heck of a lot cheaper than trying to come up with what we need to do to respond to 33,000 calls a year. Right now we're doing that, and we're about as thin as we can be. We add another 10,000 calls, you're talking at least 2 more stations and the staff to support that, just to deal with call volume. So prevention's a big one that I would say. The other thing I'll say is staffing. We still need more staffing. We are struggling. Our folks, we're working them very hard, and we're doing a lot of overtime because of that. The other half is open Station 2 as a response station. Would love to do that. But in a perfect world, I'd like to be able to plan for stations and plan for people as we move along, just like we do our large vehicles. But that's going to take some work from you folks on restructuring how our financial pieces, especially as you talk about the Vision Fund and CIP, move along. I know other communities do very well and know very well when their stations are coming up. They know exactly when they're going to build their next station. So if we had to cut, well, I hope we don't. We are really about as tight as we can be. Like I said, our 4% reduction over the last 2 years in our operational costs. We've been efficient. We've found efficiencies. We've done many programs and things just to try to become more efficient and to stop the call volume from increasing. So if we do have to cut, most of that's going to become probably programs that either are paying for themselves through grants or things that do help with our call volume. Because the 911 core response has to stay. We have to be able to respond to the community. We have to be able to get units out there and deal with those major problems. So that may mean reduction in response times or reduction in what we can provide to the community. So, like I said, might have to cut some things that are funded outside sources that reduce our call volume. So, but I tried to go as quick as I can. I could spend a lot more, you know, most of you have heard me stand up here and talk, and I can go on and on about our department. Very proud of what we do and how we do it and what we provide, and as efficient as we are. So I did bring these three here. They're the experts in each of their individual budgets. I obviously have a very decent working knowledge of it, but we want to get way in the weeds. We can have these fine gentlemen come up and answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Any comments or questions from the council? We'll go to Kevin Maher.
Thank you. Chief, I have one quick question. You said the reimbursement from Medicaid was under a lot of stress. What percentage of the actual cost do they cover?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's about 10% of what our normal and customary is, of our normal and customary bill. So I can't quote you what it is right off the top of my head, because all of them are different, but yeah.
That's close
those
enough.
government payers
Thank
are
you.
difficult.
Josh?
Thanks, Chief. The community health workers, are they in your budget at all then? Or are they
Yes.
all? They
Yeah,
are.
they're in the enterprise fund. So they have their own, you'll see them as their own separate, not line item, where am I losing that? So their own GL code. So
Okay.
0892, I think.
Does Monument Health pay for them
Yep.
still?
100%. We're still on the contract. We're in our first year. We're still in our first year of that contract of a 3-year, and I don't see that changing.
Okay.
They're seeing great benefit out of that also, to coincide with the respite center. It's an ancillary piece, but we can definitely see some assistance in holding back some of those 911 calls from service that would have normally happened.
Under the prevention side, is there still 3 of them then? Is that right?
3 prevention guys?
Yeah.
We have 7.
Oh, 7, okay. Or
Yeah.
Community health workers?
Community health workers, we have 4, one's injured, so we
Okay.
really are operating with 3 right now.
And then with the remodel then, is it Station 3 that's getting remodeled? Where the health-
Station 4.
Okay, where were those?
The
are they
community
gonna
health workers will be downtown. They'll
Oh,
be
they're
at
moving.
Station 1.
Okay.
They've got their own nice little workstations right inside Station 1.
be awesome. Thanks for the clarity.
Yep.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, thank you. I saw that giant map with all the dots you say extends really all over western South Dakota. You said not only ambulance response, but other things. What are some of those other things? And then what is the vehicle for any kind of compensation for those calls?
So that's a yes. The easy answer is yes, there's compensation for that, but it depends on the call type. So if it's those calls, most of those, well, some of them are represented in here, but most of these dots, if it's a fire apparatus that goes, no, there's no compensation. Again, it's the mutual aid piece. So we'll respond to your area and help you out if you respond and help us out, which is what those volunteer services, each color there is a different volunteer fire department district. So it's all identified by that. So to the east of us, Rapid Valley, Box Elder, Black Hawk, Whispering Pines, Doty, I'll go on and on. But so we'll respond out there. Typically the fire service, and that's state of South Dakota piece, is if it's within the operational period, there's no remuneration back to the department. So operational period being at least the first 12 hours. So we'll go out there, help them with their structure fire, but they come in here and do the same. In my time, when I was in Brent's position, we had all the volunteers were in our stations. They were responding to calls within the city limits because we had almost every unit tied up on M Hill. So other calls for service, so like we've gone to Spearfish with the hazardous materials team and do a cleanup, we bill them for that. We will bill the emergency management from Lawrence County to get reimbursed for those costs. And those costs are all within the fees and charges that the city does every year, that you guys approve every year.
And as I'm looking at all these calls throughout our county that extends forever.
Yep.
There's no vehicle for any kind of compensation directly from the county. That's not part of the
Nope.
funding plan.
Nope, we do not. We don't get anything from the county. The ambulance does not have a contract with the county to provide service. This is some of the conversation that I'm sure we'll have as we move on this year or next year about the ambulance service in the county and providing services to areas such as Box Elder. Earlier this year, I sent a letter to Custer County because we have a contract with them. We do have a contract with Scenic and Kanata Basin, so they pay us a small fee to respond out there the 3 or 4 times a year we go out there. Custer was about $2,000, which was not enough to respond down there for the 105 calls. So we've requested to move on from that contract. So, and we're starting to look at all of those as we move through the year, but some of them are a little more difficult than others.
Go to Councilman Roberts.
Thank you. We'll go back real quick to the discussion on Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever the heck it is.
Either one.
Either one, because I know you get reimbursed a certain amount from them. One of the issues that we had, I remember a decade ago or so, was we had so many frequent flyers.
Yes.
And we can only bill so many times. I don't know what that amount is, once, twice a year, whatever it is, and being reimbursed for?
I don't recall that, but no, that's not a rule anymore. If it was, if we transport them, we can bill them.
Oh, okay.
But,
Okay. But it only pays roughly 10% of what that
And
costs.
Medicare is, so Medicaid is the state, Medicare is the federal. That's the easiest way to remember it. Medicare pays a little more, but it's, the base rate's about 50%, maybe 40% of what our usual customary is.
And I would imagine quite a bit of that cost has been saved by Journey On, letting Journey On take some of these people.
Absolutely. And we can get into some of those debates about Journey On, and some of those folks have Medicaid or IHS, but some of that money's hard to get.
Yes.
And they're not enrolled or they don't have Medicaid, that's the higher number. So the ones we do, so it's way more beneficial for us to lower that call volume to try to keep that back.
Oh, absolutely. And I know there's been a lot of good changes, again, over the last decade, 5 years. Because I remember we were having a big issue for a while where it seemed like everybody in town knew that, if they said they had chest pains, then a fire truck would roll and an ambulance would roll.
Yep.
And, so I think that you guys have done a tremendous job in this area. I remember when Lance came to me maybe 5 years ago with the idea of Journey On, and I thought he was nuts. And I told him he was nuts, and it has worked out extremely well. I'm very proud of our fire department. I think we've done wonderful things, over the years. I think everybody knows my tie and my background with firefighters. A couple of my proud moments this year, if you don't mind. I was very happy to be able to give you guys the space, and that was last year, I guess, to be able to train your fire dog so he could get his licensing.
Yep.
That was pretty.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, I learned something today. I guess
That
I
was
didn't know
pretty
that.
exciting. That was pretty exciting. And also, kudos to Lance, to Greg, a few other people, for sitting down with Doyle Estes and coming up with the idea of the next station and being able to pay for that. That's something that we all know is just going to keep expanding to the east, and we need it. And I think one other thing, if I could have got this done 12 years ago, I would have, but we had a council that didn't really agree with me. But at that point, I was trying to push through the extension of Tisch Boulevard, which will increase our call times, especially to my neighborhood up north. And, you know, I think that that's a wonderful thing that we can have a station up there that actually has better call times than it does.
I would agree with that.
Whoever built a station on a cul-de-sac is an idiot. So, no offense if it was any of you guys, but I don't think it was.
Nobody in our current
It was way too far
administration had
beyond your
anything to
time.
do with that.
So, yeah, absolutely. Keep up the good job, good
Thank you.
work, and I appreciate everything you guys do.
Thank you.
Councilman Stroman?
And I agree with the Tisch Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, Chief, I just want to follow up on it. Thank you for all that you do and for all that our first responders do. And I know one of the things that we visit about every year is these write-offs that we have for emergency services. And I realize there's just not much you can do with whatever the rate is. I'm sure it's going to be Medicare or Medicaid, whichever it is going to be far short of your usual and customary charges. And so that creates a real deficit. Do you have a reimbursement specialist or someone that is working that? I don't know if there's any gold that can be mined there or not, but I mean, it just seems like, you know, it's a large number every year, and I just don't know what you can do about it. I mean, you have to provide the service, and we don't want you to not provide the service. But if there's some way we can increase our reimbursement percentage, I think that would be great.
Yes, so the short answer to that is yes. We've changed our billing process over the last year and a half or so, almost 2 years, a year and a half. We're starting to get to a point where we're seeing some of those returns. It's not great right now, but we're getting there, where we have a company that is their sole focus, is to chase the money, find better ways to get us the money, be the experts in what we do as far as billing wise and making that happen. They're doing a great job. We're sending things, this is terrible part for us because we want to give and we want to protect and do all that, but we're sending people faster to collections. We were taking 5-6 years to send people collections. Now we're doing it within the year. We're trying to even narrow that down even a little bit more so it's appropriate. What a normal medical community or medical provider would do, knowing full well we're the city of Rapid City, and we do give leniency to our citizens about that. We allow payment plans, that type of thing, which puts us in a tough spot, but we also don't want to hugely burden our community with a large ambulance bill right up front when they can't afford it. But there's the whole, they have to apply all that stuff. But yes, now really long answer, yeah, we've got folks, that's their sole focus. That's one of Chief Long's big charges, is to try to figure out ways to do that. Had some conversations with Daniel about some alternative ways to make some money off the ambulance service and how to do that. We're trying everything, but some of those things, it's more call volume, and we just don't have the capacity with the number of staff we have at this point. We can't do any more long distance transfers, and those are great payers. I mean, if there's private insurance going to Sioux Falls, we want to do those, but when we don't have the staff to be able to do it because they're all dedicated, it's pretty tough. So we just can't find more people. We can find more people, we just don't have the dollars to do that.
Councilperson Sechrist?
Sorry, Daniel. Sorry, Patrick.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for the presentation overview and all that you do for the community through the fire department services. A lot of my questions were answered on the Medicaid, Medicare. I just was curious on the reimbursement rate for some of those. It sounds like we're getting 40 to 50% reimbursement. I was also curious on the community health worker. Are we keeping some good statistics on how many people were able to actually help enroll into those programs and services available? so that, you know, in the future, if Monument Health is not able to provide funding for those positions, can we support that as a community? Does that make sense for us in the way of prevention?
Yes, we are keeping track of those, and I will try to make an effort to make sure Chief Marks sends the newsletter we send out about once a month that has some of those statistics in it. And it's great information. It's actually rather.
Yeah,
it's
I'd
really
appreciate that. I'd
Yeah.
read through it. So, and then you mentioned 7 full-time prevention specialists. Is that including the mobile medic and the
No,
community
when I
health
talk
worker?
about them, that's the fire and life safety folks,
Oh,
our
okay.
inspectors and Chief
I
Primus
see.
over there. That's, when I say prevention, that's them plus Bailey, so, yes.
And so how many mobile medics do we
4.
have on staff? Okay, so we have 4
4.
mobile medics and then 1 fully staffed community health worker.
Four community healthcare workers, 4 mobile medics, yes.
Okay, great. And then my last question is, when you have an ambulance call and your response, how many people do you send, like as an average? I know we get a lot of calls for service at my place of employment because of falls and because of the people we're serving. And sometimes 4 or 5 or more show up. And so is there a way that we could maybe reduce those numbers to
Yep,
utilize?
and we do. So, our dispatch center is accredited, both ambulance, police also, but, ambulance, and they're really close to being fire accredited. And through that, I did tons of work in the early 2010s, and then Brent and now Brian both are doing that all the time. We evaluate what's proper for those call types. That just depends on the number of people you need for whatever they're saying. That really comes back to the 911 caller.
Oh, okay.
What they're saying to the dispatcher and what they're eliciting as responses as they go through that dictates what gets sent. So
That makes sense. So
we don't decide. We did back when we built the protocol, but when the 911, when that page goes off, they tell us what we're supposed
So
to
if somebody's
send.
having stroke symptoms, you might send a larger crew than if somebody
Correct.
fell. and-
Cardiac arrest, you're gonna get a
Okay.
fire truck and an ambulance. Somebody who twists an ankle, you're gonna get an ambulance. So-
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I see that Daniel's in the queue and Kevin Maher is. I just had a couple questions. My heart burns every time I see your uncollectible bills. I mean, that's
Me too.
money. So, I understand you're using a collection agency, and I appreciate that. So, maybe I'm having a hard time understanding it. If I collapse at my house and an ambulance is sent, am I getting a bill?
Yes.
And you said that the ambulance services out of town aren't reimbursed. So am I understanding that? If you go out of the city on a
no.
call, you're still
No.
getting reimbursed?
Yes. Sorry, there might have been a misunderstanding of the question.
Okay.
But to clarify, yeah, 100%. Wherever that ambulance goes, if they transport a person, they're sending a bill.
And if it's a
No matter where it's
Okay.
at.
Thank you. If it's a Medicare or Medicaid, I mean, I go to the doctor, look at my hair, I'm on Medicare this year, I guess. You know, they still send me a bill. You know, Medicare pays part of it, and then I still get a bill. So are we taking advantage of that? Can't we be sending an additional bill?
We will send you the bill for what we are federally allowed to bill
Okay.
for. So typically for most Medicare recipients, it's their copay, which is $50.
So my last question would be, I mean, do you have any ideas how we can increase funding to get this stuff paid for? Is there any?
So we will be looking to you as the legislature moves on this next year. One of the things that we got turned down for 2 years ago was the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Act. So basically, there's a federal side of Medicaid that will reimburse the ambulance services, the difference between what the state Medicaid and what our usual and customary is. We tried, so private service or public services like ours can access that money. So that's a humongous amount. We were talking close to $1 million or $1.1 million 5 years ago. So, but the state of South Dakota put a nix to that. Medicaid put a nix to that and just said they'll up their reimbursement rate, which they did to the tune of 2.5%, which those two didn't even come close together. $800 versus $25, so.
Thank you,
So
Chief.
yeah, there's gonna be things that I'll look to have, and it may not be a resolution or whatever, but as you're talking to other legislators, to suggest to them that, yeah, we need to move forward with that.
Thank you. Daniel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As some of the council members who were in the audit discussion last summer, and we'll be having another one in September this year, the ambulance enterprise funds was one of the funds that was identified by the auditors and also by the staff as being one that is of concern. And the reason for that is that our costs continue to rise faster, of course, than what our revenue is. We have had back revenue, or essentially earnings that we've been able to use to make up the difference. Likely by the end of 2026, that will probably go away. Hopefully, the outside billing company will be able to increase it, but without that happening, we would anticipate that by 2027, we will be needing to transfer money directly from the general fund to the ambulance fund on an annual basis. And the primary culprit of that, as the chief has been saying, really has been the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates. One item that was somewhat brought up, but actually I'm glad this map is shown, is that even though when we do ambulance calls outside the city limits, we do bill for them, but when it is a Medicare or a Medicaid call, without a doubt, we are not receiving the reimbursement that's necessary to pay for that call, especially if it's 40, 50, 60 miles outside of town. That is an item that likely next year we're going to have to start addressing. If starting in 2027 we start using general fund money to subsidize the ambulance, then it's truly property tax dollars that are going to fund that, and it's probably necessary to start telling some of our sister communities that they need to assist as well, and it can't just be the property taxpayers of Rapid City. Those are never easy conversations, but that's something that will probably need to be done, as well as the chief said, have some difficult conversations with the legislature about increasing reimbursement rates.
Thank you, Daniel. Councilman Evans?
There you go. Thank you, Daniel, because that problem about us being out here by ourselves is a funding problem with schools, it's a funding problem with athletics, a funding problem with everything, and it really needs to be addressed at the state level because it just kind of permeates everything we do in this part of the country. Anyhow, I do have a couple quick questions. You mentioned a lot of grants. Do you guys have an in-house grant writer that you use, or where are you doing that?
City.
So you're
So
using
Jamie's crew.
Jamie, and
Yeah.
okay,
I saw her
evidently
back there. Sorry, she's not there anymore.
Yeah,
but
doing a good job evidently, and the actual presentation is quite beautiful and well done. And you guys did that in house, and you didn't do all this just for us. You did that yourself.
that was me.
Okay, but somebody's probably working past 4 o'clock then, because this is a really beautiful presentation. Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Culberson? If not, thank you, Chief, for your
Thank
time.
you. Appreciate it.
And
Patrick, sorry for
you want to take a little
jumping over.
break, bathroom break for anybody? We'll take a break, and I think the airport's up next. Thank you.
I didn't expect that. I looked at
sit at $235 per citizen. If we include the ambulance, it's $353 for us. If we don't, it's $256 or so. See, and that probably has a lot to do with Minnehaha County is only 45 miles across. Ours is 120.
Yeah. So, just a quick question, and I don't know who of city staff I can ask this to. I don't like this dais environment when we have these conversations. Is there any way we can have this in our room over there, and I think it'd just be less formal than this, and I think it would just be healthy?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
We could absolutely do that. We would not be able to stream the video. We could probably move one camera over there, but we could stream the audio.
So, Jim, my question, are we streaming it because it's an ordinance, we have to do that, or is just?
It's just standard practice
I mean,
for
what
us.
do you guys think?
It's standard practice for us to stream public meetings.
I just think it'd be less formal, healthier environment than this formal environment here.
I would leave that up. I don't know whose decision that would be. We could ask the city attorney if there's any legal thing. From my understanding, for a legal decision, all we need to do is publish the minutes. We're not required to stream. We're not required to record audio. We are required to have minutes.
So my request, let's not stream it, let's not record it. If someone's taking notes, fine, and I'd like to meet in that room over there.
Jim, how many people are watching the video right now? Have the city staff.
3.
Yeah, I could go. I'll get you those numbers.
I'm more comfortable with it, just, we just had an open meetings. Pretty frustrating yesterday, I would like to go away in the corner room without formality of it.
Can't you do that with the owl? You set it on the table?
Well, I would just like a less formal environment, and I guess if that can't be done, we'll just have to
No,
put
we
up
can.
with this.
We
but,
can absolutely do that.
that would be my request, is to put it over there and.
Oh, that's a good question. Angie just brought up a fact. We've already published that it's going to be in this room. Although I think if we put up signs, I don't. Those are legal questions and not my purview. But
Well, I'll reach out to Joel with those questions. Thank you, Jim, for your help
if
on
you
that.
let me know as soon as possible,
Okay.
we'll do what we can
Okay.
to get everything set up in there. If that's
Sorry
the
for the
decision.
inconvenience.
And we
but
will
thank
still
you.
we will still stream.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
I just gonna add, I do think the public has a right to watch this. This is the best setup.
Well, it's not that I don't mind sitting up here, it's just more formal. And I was hoping these conversations can be in a much less formal basis. I think we can communicate better, but that's my comments. Okay, Patrick, thank you for coming today. We appreciate your time. I'll assume you have some comments and a presentation, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Very good. Thank you. As Rod mentioned, I'm Patrick Dame from the airport, the executive director out there. I'm in my, I guess October will be my 10th year. Starting to be a long stretch. So our staff put this together, put the budget together. Tony's in the crowd here. She may assist me on some additional specifics. I'll go through some of the big bucket items. I've provided you with a simplified version of the budget, also with the capital portion, some graphs along with that. That shows the 2023 actual, 2024 actual, 2025 budget numbers, and the 2026 overall budget that's there. We included your operational revenue and expenses on one page to be able to compare the two, and we'll get into that a little bit further into the presentation. With the airport, we are an enterprise fund, and we do operate as much like a business as we possibly can. So with that, we've got a few different departments out there. Of course, our administrative department is one of our smaller departments that we've got. The airport airside operations department, they tend to handle all of the compliance documents that are required for the airport. We generate thousands of pages of compliance documents that the FAA goes through every single year, literally page by page. So we have to document everything that goes on at the airport, any discrepancies, any work orders that have to match to meet up with the discrepancies. Literally, you can go through and determine everything that's happened on a day-to-day basis in the field. So in the event that something happens on the airport, there's a record of what it is that's there, and we would have to turn over all those documents. That also includes the weather on a daily basis when we get into the winter months, and our runway reporting that we do when it's out there. So our operations staff has a pretty big job of being the policing of the airport from a safety standpoint, in ensuring that we don't have any issues that are going to happen on the facility. We have an airside maintenance department. They run the largest equipment that the city has. We have some pretty big plows, some of the biggest blowers you've ever seen. And we also have multi-function equipment that'll be 24-foot plow blades with a 20-foot broom under the center of the unit. So they've got a very integral part. And they're operating that equipment around aircraft that are upwards of $20 to $50 million a piece. So when you look at it, they've got some pretty big responsibilities for what it is that they do on the field. We have a landside maintenance department. They take care of the terminal. They do a lot of the work that goes on in there, a lot of the custodial work, and they do a fantastic job. That is a very intense job in the summertime, especially. This week has been a prime example of that. With rally going on, it gets to be extremely busy within the terminal, and takes a lot of daily maintenance from that end. We also have a parking department out there. During COVID, we took over our own parking. With that, previously, we were giving up roughly about 30% of our revenues for a contractor from Chattanooga who was running our parking at the airport. We took that in-house. That is our largest gross revenue for the airport. And in our opinion, we would have looked at doing it earlier. However, the big thing was technology and technological advancements during COVID really allowed us the opportunity to be able to do that and not necessarily be staffing a booth. Hiring staffing at lower wage to be able to man that booth was what I viewed as being one of the bigger hurdles with that. So our ability to go to more of a fully automated system really gave us that capability. We do have a lot of grants at the airport. From the federal government and the state. Most of them go hand in hand. If we're getting a federal government, there's a state grant that goes along with it. With that, we do sign a number of grant assurances for the acceptance of those funds. Primarily what those grant assurances, the big ones are, all funds that are made at the airport need to stay at the airport. We're not allowed to utilize revenues and fund other departments necessarily unless those departments are specifically doing work for the airport. We're also supposed to be as self-sufficient as possible, which right now we've been pretty self-sufficient. I think once in the time that I've been here, we've gotten some funding from the city to help us apply for some air service development grants. It was a partnership agreement. Beyond that, it's been around between the 10 and 15-year mark since we've asked the city for funding for capital improvement projects. We've been able to cash flow most of our projects on our own through that. Much like it's listed on here, the airport is funded through federal and other grants, rental income, and our rates and charges paid by our users. One of the big things when I got here 10 years ago and I started going through the financials, they appeared to be a bit light in the revenue side. Based on that, we made a lot of changes in the first 3 to 4 years that I was here. Some of you throughout your time on the council or what have you have heard about that and some of the angst that came along with it. But ultimately, we were behind where we should have been in our rates and charges, under the market. We weren't making money at the airport to be able to reinvest back into capital. We did have to increase rates, but it did cause some heartburn with our tenants and with others who are there. And I know some council folks did hear about that through the process. It has been somewhat of a painful process, but in the end, it's really helped the airport. Our users were asked for increases in an effort to pay the increases that were needed to be able to make our ends meet and our capital improvements go. When you look at our airline service, you can see the different dots on the map in terms of where we've got service to. We have 2 different carriers, at least in the summer months, that provide service to Minneapolis. Sun Country is just summer seasonal. We have 2 that provide to Chicago. One is more summer seasonal. The other one still is seasonal. The fact that they don't fly after Christmas, they take a few months off. Charlotte is a seasonal route through American. Dallas year-round. Denver year-round. And we've also got Phoenix and Vegas on there. We continue to work to fill up this section up here with Alaska is one of the major carriers we continue to work to get in. We also have been working with and meet annually with Southwest. So we do go out and meet with them on a regular basis. I know that's one thing. Anytime we announce a route, the first thing we get asked is, why don't you have Southwest? Florida, we've seen Florida come in and out of the market a few times. Right now, we're actually going to be meeting next week with Allegiant about where they're at with the Florida market. So we're currently not showing that as a dot on the map right now. That may come back in, but that is a seasonal market that will pop in and out. We did have Punta Gorda for a little while, but they've pulled that market as well. Typically, when we start to look at the Florida market, most retirees here tend to like to retire or like to go to the Southwest. We're not a big Southeast market. The east side of the state tends to be a little bit more southeast. I don't know why that is. It just, that's been kind of the pattern. Total passengers, that's both in-plane and deplane, so people getting on and off the airplanes, 856,248. Just to give you an idea, over the decade that I've been here, we've grown 68%. Over 32% of that has been just in the last 2 years. We right now are probably one of your fastest growing departments. We start to look at the community impact. We basically serve 5 states right now. We generate over $466 million in economic impact. And to give you an idea, when we did this economic impact statement a year and a half ago, we were about 110,000 less passengers in plane than we are right now. So we've actually grown beyond this economic impact statement in just a short period of time. We support 2,877 jobs in Pennington County, and we support 35 full-time city employees here on the airport. So based on our operating funds that we've got, Fund 606 is operating and maintenance. We've got 7 major cost centers within that. It's the terminal, runway, landside, what we call the north building area, or general aviation area, our aircraft rescue firefighting, parking, and administration. Moving over to our T-hangar, we actually have 1 8-unit T-hangar on the field that we do own. We ended up getting it through a lawsuit probably 7, 8 years ago. We have put a lot of improvements into that hangar. It does have a fund associated with it because under federal rules, we're running competition against private business on there. So we have to run that under our grant assurances as its own business. So it operates on its own cost center based on that. We also have our quick turnaround facility. That's the car wash area, and the car rental agencies pay us on a per wash basis for that. They also pay us rent for the bays that they clean their cars in. Operating budget, you can see revenues for 2026 projected at $13.5 million. Expenses projected at 8.8. Total net income out of that at 4.7 million. Capital budget, obviously right now with the terminal being constructed, we're in a heavy capital mode. Last year, this year, potentially into next year, meaning 2027 from that end. So we will be continuing on through Project 1. Project 1 currently has 3 phases. We did just bid phases 2 and 3. Phase 1 is rolling to a close right now. That was basically a cold shell of both the ticket counter addition, the back of house addition, and the new TSA checkpoint. Phase 2 will be the completion of the TSA checkpoint that has been bid. And phase 3 will be the completion of the realignment of the existing ticket counters with the new ticket counter, and then adding in a lot of the baggage equipment to streamline and make safer for our operation for screening and getting bags ready to be loaded on the airplane. So I know I've had many of you out to the airport. If anybody would want a tour of that, I'd be happy to provide you a new tour of the back house as we continue to roll through the completion of that. Just expecting in the years coming up, we did end up with getting good bids on our grant. When we initially bid out the terminal project, Project 1, the anticipation was that project was going to be $52 million were the architect engineer's estimates. We ended up bidding it at $74 million. Because we only got one bidder, we're able to VE it down to the cold shell package, and basically a $30 million portion of that project. When we bid the phases 2 and 3, we ended up at a total of 26 million on phases 2 and 3. So we're not all the way up to that 74 number. We're above the 52 number. So right, wrong, or indifferent, we're better off than we were from the initial bid on that. The good thing was phases 2 and 3 ended up bidding 10 million under where we anticipated. Now with that, we also had a $20 million CDS that is tied to very strict federal rules for the construction of Project 1. It does not look right now that we're going to have enough eligible to spend the entire congressional directed spending of $20 million on that portion of the project. So that is an unfortunate reality. It looks like we're going to get to about 16 to 17 million, but not the entire 20. We run out of eligible project for that. So that is something that we continue to work on with the FAA. Much like I said, what's on the screen, operating revenue matches what is on the top of your sheet here. When you look at it and you start to look at what is our biggest moneymaker for the airport, I would tell you that the former CEO of MSP said, I run a parking lot that happens to be situated between a few runways. I would tell you for us, that's the same thing. We run a parking lot that happens to be situated next to a runway. That is our largest revenue source that we've got here at the airport. We expect next year that we will clear over $4 million. We'll actually probably clear that now that we know our numbers more this year. We will clear it this year. I do anticipate that the 4.064 million is a little bit light. 4.35 million is probably going to be a more realistic number now that we've seen more of the year go by, provided we don't have some dramatic changes. The car rental commissions are our second largest. We bid that out as a percentage. When I got here, the car rental agencies hadn't been bid in 19 years. We rebid those agencies probably 5 years ago now. We actually ended up bidding up the MAG. We didn't end up getting a larger percentage that they pay us, but we got them to commit to a larger minimum annual guarantee. We can bond against a minimum annual guarantee because they have to pay us that amount whether they make it or not. So the big thing was we were probably at less than $100,000 in minimum annual guarantee. Now we're to the tune of millions of dollars in minimum annual guarantee. So it pays to keep our market competitive. Landing fees are our next largest source of revenue. We implemented landing fees prior to my arrival. We've worked on them, and we've also worked on our collection of landing fees. So we did work with a company now who looks at tail numbers to find collections. We've been able to drive up our percentage of successful collection on landing fees, but we charge that based on a per 1,000-pound basis of the weight of the airplane. And what that is at some point, we have to maintain that surface over the course of the year. We have to plow it, those kinds of things. It helps to pay for that and keeps, again, that cost on the user. Terminal rent, we recoup about 50% of the cost of the terminal of the usable area. 50% of it we end up eating. So we pretty much lose some money on the terminal rent on that, but we can't charge the carriers for the full use of that facility based on the fact that it's been funded federally. So we charge for what we can, which is a lot of the ineligible space of the facility. QTA, or quick turnaround facility, is the car rental wash facility. You saw that earlier. Land, building rent, and pasture, that amounts are there. We did increase, as I mentioned, land rent. We bid our pastures out probably for, again, one of the first times when I first arrived, and we were able to drive that cost up by more than double for what people were willing to pay to graze on airport land. Cafe commissions, we have had a recent change in the bar cafe, and that company, again, we bid that, and they are paying us a larger percentage. That is also the same company who now bid up the price of the gift shop for what they were willing to pay us. So if you would have seen these numbers back 5 years ago, they would have been drastically different than they are. They'd been about half what they are today. So again, continuing to keep a competitive market to ensure that we're getting the best use for what's there. The rest of the stuff you can kind of see, there's just operational revenues within there. I guess nothing really excited. We do pay credit card fees through the parking lot facility on that, so we do collect a credit card fee that's associated with that as well. Moving on to the expenses. Salary, wages, and benefits. This is an expense that we've seen increase over the last couple of years. Again, I'll be on replay on some of this stuff based on what the fire chief had said. We list our professional services out there for the different things that we provide funding for. We do provide direct cost of the fire department. This next year is $850,000. Last year we paid $930,000 approximately in that. And we do pay for law enforcement. We did agree to an increase in the cost of law enforcement this year. We've given them increases the last couple of years for the services that they provide. They have to provide an officer at the TSA checkpoint. So we did go from 206 to 250 within that line item. Interdepartmental charges that you see here, this number doubled last year, it doubled again this year. This was an area that was expressed in concern by the board for the increases in the interdepartmental charges. Again, rentals, we do rent some equipment in the winter. We just don't own everything. So there are some things that we do rent throughout the year. Maintenance and repair, that tends to be an item that can ebb and flow based on the amount of, if we've got some major repair items that come up. So you will see some wild swings in that number when you look back through the previous years. The rest of the stuff, kind of the office piece of it that you can see is generally kind of is what it is. The QTA, the car wash facility, again, we look to make sure that that's a cost balance or we make money on that facility. So there is costs that we keep segregated within that, as the same with the T-hangers. Capital improvements, I talked a little bit about, just looking at where we're headed into the future here. Again, finishing the TSA checkpoint out within Project 1 and the airline ticket counters and inline baggage system. This will allow for a carousel, 2 carousels in the back of house, where when they load bags into baggage carts, they're just able to slide them off and right in. Right now, there's a lot of manual carrying of bags that need to be done, and we're way behind all of the other airports that we compete with in the region on that. They've all been there for 15 years already. The terminal apron expansion, we are gonna have to start to move some terminal apron expansions to be able to look towards the future terminal development. So we do have to fill in some of the spaces in our aircraft parking apron that we'll be moving towards. We've been building our parking lot, as you guys have seen. That should be wrapped up the end of this year to be able to get additional spaces. However, we're still gonna be hitting peaks. Even after our new parking lot opens this year, we already know that Thanksgiving and Christmas will be at the capacity of that lot, almost exactly, if we look at last year's numbers. Parking additions can't end at this point. We're just growing too fast. So unless we see some sort of change in passenger growth, we're gonna need to still consider parking. Unfortunately, the next thing we're gonna have to look at is going up in parking, which you can expect is gonna be a $64 to $70 million parking garage would be the next move. That's what both Fargo and Sioux Falls' parking garages were. Our parking lot expansion for the 550 stalls that we did this year was $4.5 million. We've got a general aviation taxi lane construction that we'll be working on to open up some corporate development in the general aviation area. And then we've got some minor equipment purchases and replacement as part of the budget. So right now that kind of, it's a lot of information to go through. I did provide some graphs in there. I think one of the things that you'll see is we've worked hard to keep our expenses flat. We've worked hard to grow our revenues. And when you start to look at where we've been and where we're going, you can see that we've been able to put money away for the airport, which has allowed us to do the terminal projects that we've been able to do up to this point. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that. Councilman Maher.
Thank you, Chair. Patrick, thank you for the presentation. My question has, I noticed in revenue, you showed revenue from fuel sales. And so I'm just curious how that works, because I thought the fuel was all provided by the FBO.
Mr. Chair, Councilman Maher, we sell car fuel and diesel.
Oh, for the rental.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
Thank you.
The QTA has its own fuel for the car rental, but a lot of our tenants will buy gas from us.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's basically vehicle fuel is what it is.
Thank you.
Councilman Stroman.
Thank you, Chair. Patrick, great presentation. Thank you for the way you run our airport. I have a couple questions. And you had mentioned, I guess the first one is about the interdepartmental charges. You mentioned that your board has expressed some concern about those, and I look on the graph, and those seem to be rising at a pretty good rate. And so, can you explain what those are? I mean, those are interdepartmental charges in addition to what you pay for fire and police?
So they're the indirect charges, so the airport pays both direct and indirect. We pay direct for things like police and fire. The interdepartmental charges is indirect charges, and that goes to fund things like IT, HR, finance, now the mayor's office, attorney's office associated with that.
Do you have a separate budget for, I know when you were talking about this expansion, you had a specialized firm from Denver, I think it's a national firm, Mead and Hunt or something like that, that does a lot of the intricate FAA type legal advice. Is that, or am I
think,
just off on that?
Mr. Chair, Council Member Stroman, you'd be referring to the airport board's aviation specialized attorney, Dan Reamer.
Okay.
Yeah, he's out of the Denver area.
And so that comes out of your own operational charges, though?
That comes out of our own budget, yep, as a professional service that we hire on.
And the grant revenue, I noticed on the first page, in 2023, actual was almost $2 million, and you're anticipating nothing in 2026. Is that because the federal government has just told you that not to expect anything?
Some of that was our concession reimbursement and our COVID grants, as they rolled through the years, and that's where that's going back down to zero. So we provided that, we received money as a pass-through and gave that to our concessionaires who lost money over COVID.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Seacrest?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Patrick, for the presentation and overview. I wanted to say excellent job in diversifying your revenues and continuing to grow those in support of the airport. I was curious, I guess, I know that interdepartmental charges across the board have gone up. Was there a decrease in PILT charges to the airport budget this year?
The airport doesn't pay PILT. There was a proposal last year to apply PILT.
Okay,
However, this year, our interdepartmental charges total is the interdepartmental charges plus last year's proposal of PILT plus 20,000.
okay.
So, I mean, it is essentially the same amount as what the PILT was as proposed. I can tell you that Dan Reamer had, back in July of '24, did write a letter to Joel on this because Dan does not agree with where we're headed with this. What I would say is, this goes back to our grant assurances and that all revenue at the airport needs to be reinvested in the airport, but the airport does have the ability to pay for services rendered. So based on that, we do have to file a Form 126 to the FAA. This does get reported on that form. So, you know, when you look at we need to be able to prove that the airport has actually received the services. So there's going to have to be an accounting system that goes along with the funding that's being paid to ensure that the time is being spent, and then it needs to be reconciled at the end of the year. Now, we were told that if we're going to go down that road, that the airport will get charged for the time it takes to maintain that as well. So what I can tell you is that the airports that we compete with in the region don't pay this. And when we start to look at, you know, we had to take funding, the board made the decision to take funding out of the parking lot revenue to be able to fund the interdepartmental charges. Had we added them to the carrier's cost, our cost per enplanement would have gone up by about $1.50 a passenger. So when we start to look at, we're competing with Sioux Falls and Fargo and Bismarck for that matter. Sioux Falls and Fargo are both running CPEs and cost per enplane passenger in the $3 to $4 range. We're running in the $6 to $8 range, so the consideration of adding an additional $1.50 is something that would put us into a non-competitive position. So we had to look towards other sources of revenue to be able to fund the increase that's here. Just looking at, you know, those two airports in particular run as an airport authorities. They're able to run far more cost efficient than we are. We do need to, you know, we run our payroll based on, you know, our positions based on how the city runs positions. So when you start to look at the comparisons of what's there, we have very specialized jobs. If you look at the fire department and exactly what they do, at other airports they're able to be more diversified in what they do. So some of those things are putting us into competitive disadvantages on that. This puts us further at a competitive disadvantage. We could hire 5 additional people at the airport for what it is that we're paying for, but both of those two facilities operate with less people than we do today. Now, that being said, the airport does have a parking business, which they farm their parking business out, but currently today for us that's basically 2 full-time and 2 part-time positions.
Thank you for that information. I was curious some of those ramifications of the additional costs and how that might impact your federal funds in now and into the future. I just think to go back and see that no general fund dollars have been used to fund the airport and the past, did you say 20 years? That's really impressive in itself.
Probably 12
12.
is the last time.
In that, just that you're self-sufficient, and so I guess, not to put you in the hot seat anymore, I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I could, there were two things I didn't mention on there, just a couple of challenge items that we've got, additional challenge items. You know, I mentioned before, we're growing extremely fast. The other thing I'd say is that, you know, right now we're struggling to hire staffing. And what brought my key back to this is, again, when we staff and we pay our people, it's based on what the downtown city personnel are being paid. We try, you know, through the HR process, we mold that in. I've had 2 positions within my airside maintenance department that have been virtually a rolling. We've not been able to fill 2 positions for the better part of a year. Part of what we're hearing on stuff is from our private contractors, they're struggling to keep people at 25. Right now, we're hiring at 21. So we haven't been able to fill that position. Our mechanic position right now, this is something we'll be asking the board actually on both positions, that we're gonna need to readdress this, because our mechanic position, we're coming in, I think our last one was $3 less an hour that we had to offer the person that they're making within another city department today. And that was the recommendation that came out of HR. So it's kind of hard to offer someone a job when you got to offer them $3 less than they're making right now. So, and we've been struggling to fill positions where we're at right now, and at least in those positions, it appears to be pay-based.
Daniel, if I could go to Kelly, and then we'll come back to you. Kelly? Oh, Daniel, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to the interdepartmental charges, previously, all the enterprise funds, airport, as well as the utilities, did pay the PILT fee as well. The mayor did eliminated the PILT fee starting in the 2025 budget. So in 2024 and previously, there was a payment in lieu of taxes, which is fairly common in a lot of communities throughout the state as well as other states. But that was one thing the mayor wanted to make sure that was done away. So that was done away. With that being said, we did look at trying to revise the interdepartmental fee for the 2025 budget. That was done because the previous calculations that were used for the interdepartmental service fees, they were evidently produced more than 10 years ago. At that point, they had not been updated, and there was a lot of concern by a lot of the departments about what was actually included, what wasn't, what were the metrics that were used, that sort of thing. We did propose for the 25 budget a different calculation. At that time, we had a lot of discussion with the airport. Essentially, what the recommendation coming from the airport's attorney was to use an outside consultant who specializes in that. So the city did hire an outside consultant, an accounting firm that specializes solely in doing interdepartmental fee calculations. They do that for state governments. They do it for municipalities, for counties. They look through our budget, and with that, that's what the fees for this year are a result of that calculation. They looked at all of our fee structure, all of our services that are provided, including our attorney's office, our payroll system, HR, all of those sorts of things that every department ends up using. So, for example, there are several claims that come in from the airport. And so those claims are processed through our attorney's office. There are FTEs that spend time deliberating those claims, coming to a resolution with that. So even though they do have outside attorneys that specialize in airport things, there's still ongoing just operational legal issues that are completed, including when they received a grant for their, I think it was Allegiant that received a marketing grant. Those were contracts that were drawn up by our local attorneys here that were produced, that were also run through the city council's office, everything like that, as well as their audits. All of those sorts of things that continue to go through the regular city processes. And so that is why there's an interdepartmental charge that was calculated by a firm that specializes in that. And that's the result and what we had provided. What we intend to do is to use the same matrix to ensure that in the future we are using the same formulas, because again, that's been produced by an outside consultant, and to make sure then that we're using a similar system and we don't run into the issue that we had before, which is that no change had been made for several years.
Councilwoman Meyer.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. I'm curious if you think there's an appetite to pursue some of the legislative bills that were attempted last year, I think related to like the tax, the jet fuel tax, I believe. You'll have to remind me exactly what it was, and if we think we'll try and do that again, or another bill to help with funding.
Mr. Chair, Council Member Myers, I think you will see us put an infrastructure bill in. I don't know if there's going to be an appetite on the tax, aviation fuel tax bill. You know, some have indicated that the registration fee and the fuel tax were things that sunk the main infrastructure bill. I don't know. I think that was kind of maybe an excuse, but at the end of the day, the big thing that we were looking at with those kinds of fees is we continued to hear from the legislature for a number of years that aeronautics is not doing anything to help themselves and increase the amount of funding that they have to put towards projects. So last year we brought bills to allow them to help themselves, and the legislature still voted them down. You know, aircraft registration, for instance, I could register my Gulfstream G5 that's 10 years old for less than I can register my F-150 pickup, and that airplane's about a $7 million used airplane. So, you know, when you kind of start to look at that, it's almost a little bit ridiculous where they're at with the rates on that. I don't think we'll run those, but we will likely continue to work towards the infrastructure bills for both Sioux Falls and Rapid City's terminal projects.
Thank you. Yeah, I know some of those rates hadn't gone up since like the 60s.
That's true.
So I think that's kind of crazy. So I was just curious what was going on there. So
Yep.
thank you.
If I may, Councilwoman Sechrest, ask my questions first.
I just had
Let's
a
see if
follow-up to
already chatted.
Daniel on his PILT stuff, so yeah, it's fine.
So just a couple questions, Patrick. I do a lot of air travel and use airports all the time, and I see our parking rates are cheap, in my opinion. I mean, can't we increase those to help with this revenue? I mean, go to Denver, see what they charge down there for parking. It's crazy.
Mr. Chair, we do watch, again, you know, we need to compete with other airports and other facilities on that. We do keep an eye on what parking rates are. Quite honestly, I wish Sioux Falls would raise theirs under their new parking garage. We would likely raise them as well. But we are close to what Sioux Falls' parking rates are. Fargo has raised their parking rates with their new parking garage. So, you know, it is something that we continuously watch. We've done them a little bit more with our increases with a scalpel and not an axe. But you know, I am hearing from folks that raising parking rates, you know, I hear both sides of that. I hear some people get irritated with it. I also do hear that people really want to be able to get to covered parking and that we'd have more locals park. If we had a ramp out there, they would come out because their vehicles they'd know are covered with being within the ramp structure. So. But again, it comes down to large projects on that.
And another question, I just want to make sure I understand, have we been charged a PILT in the past?
No.
And Daniel, you said we were. Like clarification on that, if not today.
We were the only
Sure.
department that was not charged to PILT in the past.
Yeah. So Daniel, if you could clarify that, and please get back with the council. I think this is public information, Daniel, but I was made aware that the baggage thing that we, I guess, have already gotten, the FAA now is not going to cover the cost of that to the tune of $4.2 million. So that's coming out of your budget, I assume?
Correct. Now, we are, again, things on this project, there's no eligibility that at any point during the terminal, they've etched it in stone. So it has been forever changing through the project. This is new information to us, but we are continuing to negotiate. Our consultant, Mead and Hunt, has been working hard on the negotiation on that. It sounds like we maybe got somewhere today that could have enough offsets for that amount of money. So there'll be more info to come on that.
So Patrick, as you're aware, I was on the board for like 7 years. And I know the ARF services has always been a topic of discussion. I see for the 2026 budget, they're $850,000, and that's down from last year. Where we bid that recently, I think the ARF services out there. How does all that fit into this $850,000?
So, Mr. Chair, we did bid that, but then we did receive lower bids than we have been historically on that. We did get 3 bidders for it. One that was the city's fire department, another one which was $100,000 a year more. That was an outside contractor, and one that was $100,000 less. The decision was made to not award on that and to renegotiate with the fire department. Now, what I can tell you is that we had some loose office conversations, the chief and I. Didn't really get a number, but we came back and told him that we put $850,000 in the budget because we didn't have a number at budget time. He said it's probably close enough.
Couple more questions. How many bidders did we have on the parts 2 and 3?
5 on one and 6 on the other.
Okay. And who has that been awarded?
It has.
And
Seco got one, and Skull's got the other.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it's local contractors. And my last question would be: I know there's been discussion. How much life do we have in our runway? And if that goes, what's that going to cost?
$100 million in the replacement of that. So when we look at the runway, currently today, the way it sits, if we reconstruct it, there's no section we can open. The FAA likely would fund that over a 3-year period to the tune of probably about 60%. So we'd be responsible for about $40 million. Understand, in the past couple of years, I haven't seen recent bids on runway reconstructions. I know there's some going on right now that we'll probably see and be able to better understand what the cost of ours is. With that, the concern has been that we would have to close the main runway to air carrier traffic to the tune of 3 years if we go on the existing alignment, because we're going to have 4-foot elevation changes in an effort to be able to make the FAA's gradient requirements. We wouldn't be able to open a section of the runway that would be longer than 5,000 feet, and that includes a 1,000-foot safety end on each end. So based on that, it would basically shut us down to all air carrier traffic. So as part of the master planning process, what we proposed is constructing parallel to the existing runway, but 500 feet offset to the east. And that's the direction that we would go. Now, part of it is we're looking at the degradation of the runway and the pavement condition that it's in today and the degradation that it goes through into the future. We likely will be hiring a consultant coming soon to give us a second opinion to do a secondary pavement condition index study. The one thing that we found is, when we started this process, the consultant that we didn't hire, but the state did, that did our PCI 3 years ago, came back with really low numbers. Then when they did it a year ago, the numbers came in higher. Well, pavement, we all know, doesn't heal itself. So my trust for the numbers is fairly low, so the state is who always funds that project. We likely will be funding our own consultant to go give us a new set of data to compare against where the contractor's at. The other thing we're gonna ask for is a degradation calendar, so we know, are we looking at 10 years from today, are we looking at 8 years today, or 20 years from today? But I think at $100 million, we wanna make sure that we've got it right.
Thank you, Patrick. As you well know, I'm passionate about our airport. That's our biggest asset. If that doesn't exist, tourism doesn't exist in this community. So I just was asking some of those questions. I just would like the council to understand how important that asset is to Rapid City for it to continue to grow. And we must find funding to continue to get our construction project done, or we're just going backwards. Councilman Sechrist, you have one more question, please.
Yes, thank you. And just to follow up to that, so Patrick, we really don't know the timeline on the degradation of the concrete for the runway. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, we're continuing to work that out.
What year was it built?
It's not a matter of when the runway was built. There's a added section on the runway is where some of our issues lie. So it's one of the ends of the runway that's having some of the issues.
I see.
So we're gonna actually do some repairs to the runway this next year. So there's some large lateral cracking through it. We're gonna repair those sections, and we'll see how that also has an impact on the longevity of it. So, there's certain things that we can do, small repairs and things like that. But right now, I believe, that runway, I think, is at 35 years. And, you're talking, when you got concrete, you're gonna be hitting the life expectancy. And I can't remember if it's 30 or 35 years at this point.
And, okay, so I was wanting to clarify, I guess, my original intention, in chiming in. So my understanding is for the interdepartmental charges, we will be filling out this Form 126 to the FAA for cost for services. And so my question is back to Daniel on this for clarification. Are these city services that you're mentioning billable? And then what if those come in less than what you've anticipated our interdepartmental charges? And how's that going to work when, for example, what if the mayor's office doesn't assist the airport at all? I can't think of a billable reason. So I guess I was just wondering about the clarification for that. Thank you.
Daniel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of things. One, the idea behind the interdepartmental service charges is that when the mayor's office does do anything for the airport, that would be billable, because otherwise it's paid for through the property taxes. And so, for example, during last legislative cycle, the mayor did a significant amount of campaigning and work to try to get the legislature to increase their funding for airports. And so that is how the mayor's office would be reimbursed for that work, is through that interdepartmental charge. What we've discussed with the airport is that we can actually look at the actuals of what was expensed out, and if what was actually expensed out is lower than what was anticipated, then there would be a credit on the future year's interdepartmental charge. And so if there's $100,000 more expensed out than what was anticipated, then it could be reduced the following year by the same amount.
Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Mr. Evans?
Yeah, Patrick, you'd mentioned that you're talking to Southwest and Alaska both. Is that to fill that void to Salt Lake that we seem to have had, or what's the logic behind that? I know when I was a kid, we flew, and I think it was one of the original routes either for North Central or Western, was Minneapolis, Rapid, Salt Lake. I mean, we used that forever. It was viable in 1955, and then all of a sudden it's not. What happened with that route? And why was it discontinued?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Evans, that route was primarily utilized for the 50-seat regional jet to move it back and forth between Minneapolis to Salt Lake City for maintenance for SkyWest and their aircraft. So they were able to ferry the airplane with passengers all the way through with a stop in Rapid City to maintain the airplanes. They'd swap out the airplane, they'd grab a new one, fly it back through Rapid, back to the fleet in Minneapolis. So as the 50-seat RJs have gone away in SkyWest fleet, the route went away along with it. So, and that is what SkyWest has told us with that. You know, it just happens to be a matter of changing aircraft, and we keep working with, you know, they would fly that under Delta, so which is who had it before, but SkyWest did fly that previously as what's called an at-risk market. They weren't getting funding from Delta to fly it. They were flying it because it was to their own benefit to be able to ferry their airplanes back and forth. So, you know, and when you're running the number of airplanes out of Minneapolis or the number of 50-seat regional jets, it becomes a very good thing, and it almost comes a daily process. So, you know, we would have to look at now a 70-some seat aircraft, 76-seat aircraft. We have been talking with SkyWest on that. Again, it's going to have to be a profitable market for them, less the portion of them getting a benefit for moving airplanes back and forth for maintenance, because they don't maintain those airplanes in Salt Lake.
When was that discontinued? How long has it been gone?
2 years? Yeah.
Because it hasn't, I mean, I know it affects my connections when I go to the West Coast, but it just takes longer. We go through Denver. Is that something that might come back in the future, you think, that possibly?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Evans asking if that'll come back in the future years. Again, I do think that we could be able to get that back. They've expressed some interest in that, and we do. You know, I mentioned the 2 carriers that I did, but we actually meet with a lot more than just those 2 carriers. We meet with all of them, at least all of the ones that make sense for us. And every year we meet with our legacy carriers, and that's a discussion we're having both with Delta, and then we do meet with SkyWest because they're our largest, technically they're our largest carrier that provides service into Rapid City, even though they fly under everybody else's names. We meet with them specifically every year as well and have that discussion. So we have been working to try and bring that route back.
Thank you, Patrick. Does any of the council have any additional comments or questions for Patrick? If not, thank you, Patrick, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Councilman Evans has a question for Daniel.
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment. I know that when you go to really slick, I mean, some of these presentations have been really, really good. When you go to a university site or some big enterprise, you know, they have a standard layout, you know, I don't know whether it's, you know, it's done in the central offices and then pawned out to all the departments. I know that you go to university, we do that. I was thinking something that would be really good for the taxpayers to see, because people don't know where their money goes. And if on the front page of every one of their, you know, heading sheets, we had a little pie chart, and it shows where your property tax dollars are going. Because they would be shocked to find $0 going to them, to the airport. $0, you know, this little sliver of dollars going to different departments and everything. I don't think people really understand. We're always hearing this nonsense about our property taxes are too high. Not necessarily. And I don't think they understand how, you know, where the funding really goes. And so if we had a format that showed that on every page, and they looked at that tiny little chunk went to each of these departments, that might be really good information for everybody to see. Just a comment. Maybe we should think about doing that.
Thank you, Councilman Evans. Terry, sorry, we're running late here. I appreciate you coming in. Just one thought Councilman Stroman had. We have great questions. I've learned a lot, but maybe since this is a budget meeting, if we can kind of keep our questions related directly to the budgets, and then any of our additional questions we can send to the directors offline. It just might be more efficient. And I'm guilty of it too, because we're learning a lot. So Terry, hopefully we'll be out here by 8 o'clock.
I know I will be.
I'm going to do much better than that. Good evening. Thank you for having these budget hearings. For someone like me who reports to a board, I generally don't come to the council. I do watch you on YouTube, but it's nice to be able to come before you and present information to you. So thank you for the opportunity. I've given you some handouts. Jim has helped with that. Thank you, Jim. I wanted to educate you, enlighten you, regale you with some of the library services. And it's such an extensive list that it wasn't possible to put it really in a readable slide. So I did it as a handout, and this is a list of some of the services the library offers, certainly not all of them, but we tried to be as inclusive as possible in coming up with that. So again, thank you for this opportunity to talk about the budget. I'd like to share some figures with you from our 2024 annual report. The library had just shy of 1 million checkouts. I think we were 998,800 and something or other, so we were very close to 1 million checkouts last year. 63,000 questions answered, and the math on that works out to about 175, 177 questions a day that the library is open. Those questions are critical to the people asking them, even though they may vary from where are the bathrooms to I need help using my Kindle, or the doctor just prescribed this new medicine for me. Can you help me find information about it? Or I need to apply for a job. These are only done online, and I don't know how to use the computer. So those are a lot of the types of questions we get. 926 events for kids, for teens, and for adults. And I will say that the number of teens that we have been engaging has gone up, which is a real hard thing to do, and that's all credit to our youth staff. 926 events is a phenomenal number. It's probably too much to continue to handle at that level. So we're going to look at perhaps paring back the numbers and maintaining or enhancing the quality of those events. Over 250,000 computer and Wi-Fi hours. That is, again, a phenomenal number, but interestingly, the number of our public access computers has dropped over the years, and what has increased significantly is the Wi-Fi hours because of people bringing in their phones, their tablet devices, their personal laptops, and using the Wi-Fi at the library. And then again, very significant are the 800 plus classes and educational resources we offer online. That's through our online 24/7 library. You may not know that you can get college and school, high school, even elementary school tutoring if you have a student who needs help, no matter what the subject is, math or English or chemistry or pre-calc, whatever it might be. You can get one-on-one tutors, all available through your library card. And that same kind of service is available for job coaching. We have live job coaches that can help review a resume or fine-tune a cover letter or even do practice interviews with someone. So those are a number of the resources that are offered. So we like to think the library is valuable to the community, but it's sometimes difficult to really quantify that. So this table identifies, again, some of the services we offer, not all of them. But if you tally up all the uses and all the value of those services, it comes out to over $43 million. So with a budget of approximately $4.6 million, that's an awfully good ROI. I believe it's over 9-to-1 ROI for the library services. And of course, we compare ourselves to see how we're doing. We compare ourselves with other libraries around the communities, the Black Hills communities and the state. So the comparison shown here, blue is Rapid City Library. The gold color is the Black Hills Library Consortium. And that is a group of 12 member libraries throughout the Black Hills area, ranging from Edgemont to Spearfish to Wall to Deadwood. And we collaborate and cooperate on sharing library resources and services. And then the pale green comparison line is for other libraries around the state. And some of the other libraries we've compared ourselves with are the larger libraries in the state: Siouxland, Aberdeen, Mitchell, Yankton, Vermilion, Brookings. I believe Huron is in there as well. So what this shows is that for Rapid City, our operating budget per capita is significantly less than the other comparative libraries in the state. The collection expenditure, if you look at the dollars, it doesn't look like it's that much different in terms of the dollars, but the percentage, we spend 17% of our operating budget on collections to be used by the members of the public. That's almost double the 9% average of other libraries. Circulations per capita, checkouts, or use per capita, we're pretty much on par with the other libraries around the state. But here's where it gets significant in the turnover per capita, the turnover of collections and holdings. What this shows is our turnover is significantly higher than at other libraries. And what that means is those items that we purchase for use by the community in Rapid City are very heavily used, more so than other collections are used in their respective libraries. And then also attendance per program, those numbers again are phenomenal. So yes, we had a lot of events, but we also had significant attendance at those events. And it'll be interesting for us to track how that might change if we do decrease the number of events, but that is something that we'll watch. So we were all asked to present areas of focus for 2026, which is great. We have a strategic plan that we work towards, and all of these things work with our strategic plan. One of the things we're looking at is to see how we can have a Northside Branch Library, probably in conjunction with another facility. That would be the best opportunity for us. And one of the things we're looking at is the possibility of having a staffless library. The technology exists whereby somebody could scan their library card to get access into the library, identify what they want throughout the collection, pick up those books, and walk out the door, and as they're leaving, those books would be checked out to them. The technology isn't cheap, but it does exist. And it would minimize the need for additional staff to provide that branch library. Now, that doesn't mean we would never have staff there. We would certainly have them there for afternoons of reference help or story times or community meetings, that kind of thing. But that is definitely one of the things we're investigating. Another area we're looking at is how to get the library out further into the community. And one of the options is, again, staff-free kiosks in outlying neighborhoods. These are essentially book vending machines, but instead of purchasing the books, you check them out with your library card. We do already have a significant home delivery service for people who are homebound for whatever reason. There's probably more need than we serve right now, and we would like to expand that. Another area we would like to focus on is no return collections for topics that can be somewhat stigmatizing if people ask for help, like for example, mental health issues. It can be challenging for someone to come up to essentially a stranger in the library and ask for help on a topic like that. So we would like to see if we can get funding for that, to purchase materials and identify either community centers or areas within the community where we can leave those books and people can take them as they need them. If they want to return them, great. If they don't, so be it. And then also literacy opportunities like story walks along the bike path. We're looking to shoot for a literacy challenge to see if we can get the community to read 1 million books. And all of this plays into our mission of connecting the community to education, information, and innovation. Now with the 2026 budget, we did some proactive and preemptive budget reductions. One of those areas was the reduction of 1.35 FTEs, nearly $107,000 in savings. And part of this came about because we had a vacant position, we hadn't filled it. We always assess vacancies to determine what the greatest need is for the library before we fill them. And this one we couldn't quite settle on what we needed. So I talked to Daniel and we did decide to give up this position, and it was then taken up by HR to use for a position that will be, I think, of benefit to the entire city. The other position, we had a full-time admin position in the library, and it had occurred to me that that really probably wasn't a full-time job. And when that was coming vacant, I again talked with Daniel about what the opportunities would be, because we definitely would need some help with finance to get through the transition. And in talking together, we finally ended up on the concept of job sharing. So one of his finance office employees comes over to the library 2 days a week and works in our business office. And I haven't checked in with Daniel to see how it's working for him, but it's great from our perspective. It's really working out well. We also have eliminated 4 research databases. I mentioned all the databases where people can get online and educate themselves and have learning opportunities. But we evaluate those all the time to determine what the cost is per use of those databases, because they are not cheap. And we assess if we have something similar in the collection, if there's something else that would meet the need. The result of that investigation was that we chose 4 databases to eliminate, estimated about $6,000 savings. And then we also had supported Early Learner Rapid City, which is an outside initiative. Support for that initiative started with the mayor's office a number of years ago, and it was transitioned to the library 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. And we have supported that in our budget. For fiscal year 25, the support is $10,000, but in looking at the 2026 budget, we just needed to make our operations work, and so the tough decision was made to eliminate that. It's not that we don't support and encourage early literacy, because that's kind of what we do, but in terms of those budget dollars, we really needed to retain those within our operational budget. The budgets presented to you, I'll do a quick overview. There are 3 budgets. 609 is the city budget, and that is your allocation that comes from the general fund. That is the majority of our budget. And then 160 is the county budget. That is a contract that we have had with Pennington County for almost 20 years now, and they fund libraries, the 4 public libraries in Pennington County. They give us an allocation so that we can serve county residents who live outside our city limits. And then the last budget is the very small one. It's the board funds budget, and those are fines. Well, it used to be fines. We no longer charge fines, but it's fees for if we do test proctoring for someone, if somebody rents a meeting room for something that we would charge for. We generally don't, but sometimes there is a charge. Things that are made in the maker space, copies, that kind of thing. Those go into the board funds budget. And that typically has been a capital projects budget that we have been accumulating for different capital projects, but we do budget a small amount out of that. And I told you it was going to be short. That is what I have to present to you. If you have any questions, thank you, Chairman Pettigrew, for sending some questions earlier, as did Councilman Lehman, and I appreciate the opportunity to answer those in advance, but I would certainly entertain other questions if you have them.
Councilwoman Meyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have to, I would be remiss if I didn't just make the quick comment of how proud I am of our library. The output is phenomenal, and you are one of the only spaces where it's free to exist in a safe space. So I just want to applaud all the work you and your staff do. I just have a question on expenses. It looks like supplies and materials went down 91%. Is that just related to, did you have to fund the bookmobile in 2025 or?
Not really. Last year and this year, we have purchased some supplies. We have some fairly pricey supplies. You'd be surprised that library cards, the plastic library cards, can accumulate in cost. But even more costly than those are the RFID, the security tags that we get for our materials. And we did purchase enough of those to get us through most of 2026. We probably will need some RFID tags, but not to the quantity we would generally have purchased.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
One comment and one question, Terry. For those of you who subscribe to the Rapid City Journal, you can get that if you have a library card through the library's website, and you don't have to pay for a journal, the Rapid City Journal. My wife and I use that every day, so it's a cost savings for us. Correct me if I'm wrong, Terry, but isn't there some sort of state statute that the counties are to provide library services? And if so, can we get the county to step up more and get more revenue to you guys? I thought that was a state statute, but maybe I'm wrong.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the county question is a little interesting. There are 4 libraries in Pennington County: Hill City, Keystone, Rapid City, and Wall. And all of us receive a level of funding through the county. Obviously, Rapid City receives the lion's share because we're the largest of the libraries. The county did request that all the libraries appear before them a month or so ago to present our budgets, which I did. There were 3 of us in attendance, 3 out of the 4. And when the other libraries got up to present, they asked each of those libraries, what would you do with more money in your budget? And I thought, well, that's an interesting question. Never heard that come from the county before. And when I got up there to present, the comment was, we think we give Rapid City too much money, and we're thinking about cutting the allocation to Rapid City. Now, the first thing is, it is a contracted allocation, so the contract would have to be changed. But the other thing is that over the 20-some years of the contract, the county has accounted for approximately 20% of the library use, and they fund 10% of the budget. So, yes, you're correct. They could be stepping up. They have indicated they're not terribly inclined to do so. we might be looking at something like a partial fee for county residents who live outside of Rapid City limits, but that is all to be decided. And in terms of state statute, locally, the county residents did vote overwhelmingly in 1998 and 1999. I believe it was 90-some% in favor of the county providing library service. And they had the option to set up their own library, but they chose to contract with other libraries, which is a provision in the state law. They can do that.
Thank you, Terry. Councilman Evans?
Thank you. I agree with Ms. Meyer that I'm very proud of our library. You do a great job. I think several years ago you were featured in USA Today,
Yes.
big as one of the 10 libraries that actually accomplish what they're supposed to do for their community. So that was a source of pride. Should be in a big poster down there. If it's not, you should get a copy. But you mentioned a branch, a possibility of a branch. At one time, we, with the schools, opened that beautiful new Beetle facility that I believe we experimented with that. Whatever happened to that proposition? And is that really something that's necessary now? I know in Sioux Falls they have several branch libraries, I think. Bismarck just has one central library. I don't know what other towns do. I know the bigger the city gets. They're all over Lincoln, Nebraska. Where are we at, and is that really a viable model for the future?
Thank you for the question. That is one of the reasons we implemented the Bookmobile. We kicked off the Bookmobile in 2024, and the purpose of that was to get the library out into the community, into some of the outlying areas. There are some areas, North Rapid is a good example. Southeast Rapid towards the valley might be another opportunity. The communities there, a small branch might serve them. We probably can't get the Bookmobile to them on a frequent enough basis. But again, the other thing I mentioned were the book kiosks, the book vending kiosks, and that might be another opportunity. So all to be explored. To your question about the General Beetle library, we did have a library there, I believe, for 8 or 10 years. It morphed. The purpose and the intention, I believe, morphed. The school administration changed, for one thing. That made a difference. But it was, the way the library was physically structured was a little difficult too, because they didn't want adults in the library during the day, which makes sense because it was in the middle of the school. But we're a public library. We serve everyone in the community, and it became more and more of a challenge for us to have a branch where we were not serving 2/3 to 3/4 of our population. So yeah, that went away. I think when the schools closed down with COVID, that was when we ended that relationship.
Any other comments or questions for our library director? If not, thank you, Terry, for your presentation.
Thank you, and you have time now for dinner, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, council, for attending today. We are back at it tomorrow, so I hope most of us can make it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.